Okay, let's dive into a little thing we call the mailbag. At John Middlekauff is my Instagram. Fire in those DMs. Get your questions answered here on YouTube. Subscribe to the page. Make sure you hammer that subscribe button. Subscribe to the page. And it's on the entirety of the podcast as well on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you may listen. 3 and Out with me, John Middlekauff. Go subscribe. So this is a mailbag edition only. We do it basically every day. But because this is the holiday week, this is going to be, some lasting content till we get to the Thursday night games. My name is Jaylen, but I'm a Chiefs and Eagles fan from KC. How the hell does Staley still have a job on the Chargers? They cost me $10,000. I heard, I was listening this morning when I was at the gym to Simmons and Sal, and I have to agree that to gamble on that game, to gamble at this point in time on the Los Angeles Chargers, I still call them the San Diego Chargers, Brandon Staley, hell, even the Packers at Lambeau. You're a bold man. I'm all for getting aggressive. I love a good bet. Did not have a great night Saturday night, which slowed me down into Sunday. Loved Oregon State. Obviously, they did not come through. But $10,000 on Brandon Staley? How the fuck could you do that? How could you feel comfortable? Because here's the thing. The thing with the Chargers, and they lose a ton of these one-score games, they also tend to win some of them. I just would never feel very comfortable putting $1, let alone 10K, 100K, whatever. Even the biggest of locks. Like, under no circumstances should the Chargers lose to the Packers, especially when Aaron Jones in the middle of the game, arguably their best player, is carried off the field and looks like he's in tears. But when you play the Brandon Staley defense and he can bitch and moan all he wants, stop asking me. No, Brandon, we're going to continue to ask you. Because when you call defenses, they get first downs. You blow coverages and they score touchdowns. Whether you play the Packers, whether you play Chaparral High School, or whether you fucking play Texas Tech, they would get first downs and they would get touchdowns on your blown coverages. So the questions are no one's going to ask, like, are you going to bench Justin Herbert? Is Keenan Allen? What else are we supposed to ask? There is only one question when it comes to the Chargers. What is your deal, bro? What is going on? It's crazy. I have nothing personal against this guy. I spotted him as a fraud 3 years ago. I had buddies that worked with him when he was a young assistant in Chicago, and the one thing I was consistently told, it's not like this guy had bounced around Alabama, Ohio State, USC, Oregon. This guy came from John Carroll, a small school, had never worked in Power 5, let alone the NFL. And I was told this, the moment he got to the NFL was a know-it-all, acted like he knew everything. And I think when you watch him, I'd say all these years later, but the guy hasn't even been in the NFL a decade. And he carries himself like, you can be a dick. Part of being a football coach, sometimes you have to be an a-hole. But when you're going to act like that at press conferences, you better have some pelts on the wall. You better be Bill Parcells. You better be Belichick. You better be Tomlin or Pete Carroll. Andy Reid could snap if he wants to. You're not allowed to. And I hope the media and the big J's, they come with a fucking fury on a daily basis. Every press conference you have, I hope all of the big J's constantly and never stop asking. The only question I want to know as a consumer, as a fan, and you should too as someone that bet $10,000, will you still call defensive plays? Are you still going to be the defensive coordinator? I'm keeping my fingers crossed that every question moving forward with the Chargers until this guy is relieved of his duties. I don't root against a guy losing his job, even though this guy, to me, there's a difference of like hardworking people losing their job, hardworking coaches losing their job. I do feel for that. There's a difference of a guy who I view as a scam artist in that position, who's costing hardworking people like Coach Jay his money, getting up there and belittling the fellow writer for the Los Angeles Times or the Orange County Register, who is asking a question we're all thinking, well, if you're not going to get fired and the Spanoses can't even fathom paying you to go away, are you still going to call defensive plays? Oh, my God, keep asking me. No, Brandon, we are going to keep asking you that question because we watch your defense. And every week we watch your defense and the same thing happens. And it'd be one thing if you were just some random team. You have a top 5 quarterback, and we view you as sinking the ship. You didn't run into an iceberg. There's not some other external variables. It's you. So I hope that all the big J's in Southern California continue to hammer it. Will you be the defensive coordinator? I can't get enough of it. You talk about Staley needing to go, and I agree. But what about Telesco? He's been there for 11 years and has nothing to show for it. Herbert fell into his lap. He absolutely whiffed on the 22 draft or free agency class. Agreed. And last year's draft, he chooses Johnson over Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers. I'm assuming you watched the game. Oh, I did. I watched all the Charger games. But I've watched the Charger games for 20 plus years. I like the brand. I like their quarterbacks. I was always a Phillip Rivers guy. I'm a Justin Herbert guy. You know, it's weird. They don't have a big local following. They're always a national brand. Why? They have star quarterbacks. You get a star quarterback, people pay attention. You don't need to be the 49ers, the Dallas Cowboys, or the New York Giants. You give me a star quarterback, we pay attention to you, right? Tampa Bay's irrelevant. You put Tom Brady on it, we're all talking about it. We're putting you on primetime games. That's the way the NFL works. Yeah, I would say Telesco would be in trouble. I heard someone say this, and they're right. You don't get 4 coaches, right? You just don't get 4 coaches. You got McCoy. He got Anthony Lynn. He got Brandon Staley. You don't get a 4th. That's not the way it works. Usually the rule of thumb is you get 2, right? But you don't get 4. Now, the Spanos, the family, the whole thing's a little weird. But I've always defended Tom Telesco. I don't know him personally, but I think he's, for the most part, done a pretty good job. But I'm with you. Like, it's weird. You get credit, I think, for like mid-round picks, right? You get Richard Sherman in the 5th. You get credit for that. You get George Kittle in the 5th. You get credit for that. You get Travis Kelce in the 3rd. When you draft Justin Herbert at 6, and everyone, and listen, Tom's got a little, I mean this in a nice way because he's friends with like Cowards, the Gottliebs, but he's got like, does he really like these guys, or does he kind of know that he needs them to have his back? Like I'm always torn. Like some people in those spots, like Andy Reid or Belichick, you do it so long, you develop friendships. Then there are some guys that know there are certain people you got to cozy up to because you're going to need them during the downtimes. Some GMs don't give a shit about that at all. They're not looking to make friends. That ain't their deal. And when I look at him, I go, I don't know him personally. And like I said, I've always supported him. But, and listen, the Brandon Staley pick might not have been his choice, but you make moves like the wide receiver move. I mean, the dude dropped it that would have got them, in position, right, to kick a field goal. But Zay Flowers is really good. Really good. Jordan Addison, I watched him cook the 49ers. Those 2 guys are better than the dude the Chargers took. So, yeah, I would say he's gone. I would say he's for sure gone if they fire Brandon Staley. And this thing with the Chargers, you never know. They are, I truly believe this. I'm not just being funny or whatever. It's a disease when you're super cheap and you have that level of wealth. I always support people that are cheap, that are frugal, if you don't have that much money. Hell, I have much more money these last 5 years, but I've never been one that pinches pennies. I don't have the energy. I was talking about my brother with this. He's come in for Thanksgiving, went to pick up some food, and recording this before the Eagles-Chiefs game. And we were talking about some people that obviously we both know from growing up, and some of the people, the way he was describing them, put so much effort into like avoid a penny here, $100 here. It's like the amount of time and energy that you put into that, you can just avoid it, right? By just doing something else and making the money. Your time is worth valuable amount of money, right? You have a finite amount of time. So every ounce of energy and time you put in, if you only got $10, all for trying to get that $12 thing down to $9. But when you have hundreds of millions of dollars and you're worried about paying a coach, you'd rather pay a guy 7 than 12. I think you're a fucking loser. I think you're a legitimate loser. And here's another thing. If you're a self-made guy, like Tiger Woods is notoriously cheap. It is ingrained into you from when you're young. He didn't grow up with much money, and it is hard to shake that. And I give him a little benefit of the doubt when he's in his 20s. But once you're basically almost 50 and people still like, he's really cheap, like you got to change your ways a little bit, right? When you're like not paying for the Navy SEALs, when you're buying cheeseburgers, that's a reflection of who you are as a person. And I'm a Tiger guy, But there's some stuff out there when it comes to money. Michael Jordan like that too, right? I respect Charles Barkley. Grew up with nothing, gets money, and sees the impact you could have, right? So I think it's a disease. People don't shake it. And the Spanoses are – the difference, though, is Tiger, Michael, they made all their cash. Dean was handed this from generational – his grandpa, his dad. Like, he didn't do shit. He was just lucky that he was a little swimmer when dad went into mom, right? So I think they don't even get enough shit, right? They really don't. Mark Davis takes a lot of shit because of his haircut, because of his look. You got to give Mark Davis credit. It has not worked, but he has tried. Like, you go, listen, the Gruden thing was a disaster, but he went after a guy that all these other people wanted, right? From major USC to Tennessee to all the big-time colleges to the Colts. He was turning down Irsay. The Glazers wanted him to come back. Jerry Jones had sniffed around. He's like, I'll give you $100 million. Couple years later, after that thing blows up in his face, I guess a year later, because he gets fired in the middle of the year for something that Mark Davis had nothing to do with, he gets the opportunity to hire Josh McDaniels. Again, complete failure, but at least he tried. He's like, get this guy from New England. It just keeps failing. The Spanoses would fucking throw up before they ever thought of giving a coach a 6-year contract. And maybe they go, well, John, look at them. They all fail. Well, inevitably, you got to get one because you keep hiring these cheap guys, and the other teams you're playing would send the limo to pick them up so they're on the sideline when the ball kicks off because they dream about playing Brandon Staley. Anthony Lynn, good guy, bad head coach. Ironically, better than Brandon Staley. Mike McCoy, same thing. But these are all position coaches. And I say this all the time about the NFL. Nothing wrong with being a position coach. If you're a position coach, Anthony Lynn's probably making $800,000-$900,000 to be the running back coach, assistant head coach for the San Francisco 49ers. He's not making $100,000. He's making, he might be making $1 million. This is not the NBA or Major League Baseball where it's like, you better be the lead dog or you get nothing. Everyone's making huge cash. A running back coach in the SEC is making $500,000. The money that is flowing in through coaching is insane. But if you want to get one of the top guys, if you want to have a good coach, if you're watching the Rams Seattle, both those guys are making $15 to $18 million. That's what Sean McVay, that's what Pete Carroll makes. If you're watching Andy Reid, he's probably making somewhere between $50 and $20 million. 15, not 50, 15 and 20. That's what they cost. Listen, Lincoln Riley kind of sucks now, but like to get Lincoln Riley's services, you had to pay him $120 million. You want Brian Kelly? $90 million. That's the cost of it. That's the price of admission to get guys that have a resume and that could work. You want Jim Harbaugh? It ain't cheap. This is not, we're not talking about hourly workers, right? It's one thing if I get into something and I need a lawyer, maybe I'm not going to get the top of the top, right? But if I have a company that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars and I get into litigation, if I pinch pennies with a lawyer, I'm an idiot. Just like, listen, if you have the means, especially like I'm not a W-2 guy. Anyone listening that's not a W-2 guy, I would always lean to pay more for an accountant than less. They can change, they can make you a ton of money, right? Hell, even if I am a W-2 guy, if I get a side income, I would always be willing to pay a little more to accountants and lawyers because in the big picture, they inevitably can make you money. So if you're in the football business and you're not willing to pay premiums for coaches, you're going to lose. You're just going to lose. That's just a fact. There aren't, $6 million coaches rattling off Super Bowls or national championships. That is just not the way it works. Never has, never will. Who are the most famous coaches? All the highest paid guys. My entire life. From Walsh to Parcells to Holmgren to Jimmy Johnson. You just go through all the guys winning the most. It's just the nature of the beast. Thanks for putting my question in the mailbag. Do you think the success of Dobbs, even with the Sunday Night Football loss, is a referendum on the Pittsburgh Steelers? They had him for 3 years, and he never saw the field. I look back and think, could he have had 3 years to build him up, but instead regress with Kenny Pickett? I think it's easy to play this game. I really do. If you look at baseball, it happens a lot. You get guys in the minor league system, and for whatever reason, he doesn't crack through. Maybe you do bring him up for a stint, and it doesn't go well. Then all of a sudden, you trade him to the Padres or the, whoever, the Tampa Bay, and he's like an all-star. It happens all the time in baseball. It doesn't happen often in football at quarterback, right? It's rare. Like even the backup quarterback that gets traded, like in my life, it's happened with Matt Schaub. It happened with Jimmy Garoppolo, where you kind of got to trade a decent amount to get the backup quarterback, but everyone kind of knows. It's pretty rare that a guy like Joshua Dobbs can be viewed as this complete random. I mean, as a guy, let's face it, who felt like he's holding on to an NFL career for dear life, to all of a sudden, I would say the Tennessee stretch last year to this year with Arizona and then Minnesota, where you're like, wait, I am watching shitty quarterback after shitty and this guy, people wouldn't pay this guy like $5-6 million when a year starts to be the backup. It's pretty crazy. But we're dealing with human beings. Different franchises have agendas, right? Like, I'll say this for the Arizona Cardinals, they got rid of Colt McCoy so they could just trade and start Josh Dobbs. And the reason Joshua Dobbs lost his job was, one, they get value, and Kyler was coming back. And maybe the owner wanted to see the young, rookie quarterback if Kyler couldn't have come back. But yeah, I mean, it's you don't see it very often the way it played out, that's for sure. Something magical happens when the third quarter ends and the fourth quarter begins. The energy changes. The fourth quarter is where games are won, where champions are made. And in business, it's where sales teams become legends. That's why HubSpot built Sales Hub, to give sales reps the deal-making tools they need to win in Q4 and close the year strong. Sales Hub, prospecting workplaces, organizes your schedule, goals, and to-do lists in one place to save your team precious fourth quarter time. Smart sequences help sales reps close deals faster than ever. And with an easy-to-use deal management tool, reps can find, track, and close deals all in one place. Plus, AI forecasting helps you accurately predict future success, which means less hoping for deals and more crushing targets. Put your sales team on the fast track to winning Q4 with Sales Hub. Learn more at HubSpot.com/sales. Big fan. Questions for the mailbag. As a fan, I see when a defense makes a tackle for a loss, especially on third down. The defense tends to run about 10 yards or so. Dabbing. Why can't the coaching staff teach the offense to line up, get a free play, and outside penalty? Okay. I read that pretty poorly. I butchered the English language right there. What he essentially asked, they get a big tackle for loss. They all celebrate. Why don't we get up to the line, snap the ball when they're off, and get a penalty? That's a good question. I mean, that's a good question for an offensive coach, because I also think it's probably a little harder in reality than it sounds in a DM. Because if I think about, I get a TFL, let's say on I guess a lot of them would happen on a run play because a sack, but let's say it's a sack. Well, some of my wide receivers might be 15, 20 yards down the field. So I got to run them back. So there's a lot of moving parts. And even on a run play, my wide receivers are in the corner blocking. That in theory should be easier, but I honestly don't have a great answer for you. Do you think the Chargers should just rip the Band-Aid off now? I'm getting a lot of Charger questions. And Kellen, you know why? And this is what I respect about the NFL, and I told Coward this on Sunday night. There is no tanking. When you turn on Washington, New York, when you turn on that Packers-Charger game, the Packers, in theory, should just lose out. The Giants should never win a game again, right? Put themselves in the best draft position. This season's going nowhere. But no one's wired like that. Coaches, executives never talk about losing, ever. I've been in a building that, been 4-8. I've been in another. Well, I wasn't in the building the next year when they actually went 4-12. But no one's ever trying to lose, ever. Maybe that last week you kind of mail it in, but that's just not the way guys are wired. And most importantly, the players do not give a shit. They just don't care. And in fairness to the players, like, I can be cut at any moment. The overwhelming majority of guys on a field for the bad teams don't have huge guaranteed contracts. And I've been taught my entire life, from high school through college, because you got to play college football, even if it's a lower level, but the majority of guys in the NFL are Division I football players, through the NFL, especially most of the league is not first round picks. A lot of fourth, sixth, seventh, undrafted free agents. You're told every single rep that's on film is your resume. So, and the other thing is in football, unlike basketball, like James Harden he can just have a game where he doesn't try. It's like, whatever. Russell Westbrook can just stand there not trying. It's like, doesn't matter. All my money's coming. None of it matters. Same thing in baseball. It's like, you can bench me if I'm not hitting well. If I'm making 20 million, I'm making 20. At any moment in the NFL, I can cut you. And two, if they put me in the game and I'm not trying, if I'm a D tackle, a linebacker, a running back, I will get fucking hurt. So it really hit me on Sunday. There are a lot of variables why the NFL has lapped every other sport. Like, the gap is enormous. The gap is so big. The second biggest sport in America by a wide margin right now is college football. So it goes the NFL, that's in a different stratosphere. College football, I saw this list of the television ratings for 2 weeks ago. Like Alabama, Kentucky. Alabama destroyed them. Did almost 3 million people. For example, there is not one NBA game, LeBron, Curry, this regular season, maybe Christmas, but not now that the NFL plays on Christmas, that will do numbers like that. If the NBA was doing big numbers as in-season tournament, the whole reason they did it, that's all you'd ever hear about. But it's hard for them to sniff 1.5, 2 million people to watch their big games. That's with Curry, Giannis, LeBron. People don't watch it. Yet in football, Alabama, fucking Kentucky, and they were like the 10th highest rated game of that day. Michigan, Penn State did almost 10 million people. The World Series didn't do any over 9 million. Now, I know it was a bad matchup, but still, obviously baseball from a viewership standpoint has fallen behind. But like, one thing as a football fan, even if your team sucks, even if your team really sucks, the Giants, for example, you're going to watch it every week. One, scarcity of inventory. You only get one game. And two, on any given week, it's not even cliche. Your team could win. More than likely, you're going to lose. But like, Buffalo, like, why am I watching this game? And all of a sudden, you're like, we're going to beat the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football. A couple weeks later, we're even shittier. We're playing Washington. Like, God, Washington's just better than us. All of a sudden, Tommy DeVito's throwing touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. You're like, we're going to win. And then you win pretty easily. And that's what football has, that us as a consumer, we have never had more options. We got a million things to watch. Netflix, Apple Plus, podcasts, YouTubes. You can watch anything at any moment. It doesn't matter. Hell, you want to read a book or do you want to listen to the book? And then, families, we like anything in life, people have responsibilities, less and less time, especially the older you get. But with football, for the most part, it's on Sunday and you only have to give your 3 hours to watch your team. It's the greatest television business for a sport ever. There is no duplicating that. The NBA and baseball pushes back so fast. You're like, probably take some games away. They're like, no, never. Okay. No one's going to watch. No one's going to watch. You're losing viewers. And I'm a diehard sports fan for 30 years. Watched all sports my entire life and the individual sports. Grew up watching tennis. Obviously, I love golf, but I've never argued like golf's niche. I mean, they struggle to get 2-3 million people watching. That's just the nature of the business. So do all the other sports now, except football. And I thought it was on full display Sunday with like, goddamn, everyone. You can say, oh, it's been a shitty year. I don't know. It feels like the same as always. And these teams, man, they just try. They really do. I don't see Harbaugh going to the Chargers. I just don't see them paying. Will you give a scout's rundown of Jerred Brown? Probably spelled the 49ers rookie. Maybe you did after the draft. But a refresher. And maybe how you thought he performed in limited play. Well, a lot of guys, and he was their 3rd round pick from Penn State. When you're a safety or a linebacker or, positions like that go in the 3rd or 4th round, you obviously have people in the building who probably think you're, a top, somewhere between, I would say, pick 50 and 80. Like, you could be a 2nd round pick, but you also could be a 4th round pick. You're always going to have a limitation, whether it's a size component, whether you're a little undersized physically, whether you're short, and speed, right? When you go to the combine and you run slow, fair or not, that determines your market value, right? The size of a lot on a given street, like my house even was in shitty shape when I bought it, did a full remodel. Well, the value is still relatively high because my lot is like 30% bigger than everyone in my community except like 3 other lots out of I don't even know how many homes. Let's say 800. So like there are certain things that bump things up and certain things that bump things down. And when you run a slow 40, we can say, listen, you're not paid to run 40s in the NFL, but it does factor in to your evaluation in terms of the mark of what I have to pay on draft day for your services. And he didn't run that fast. If memory serves me correct, I think he ran a 4.6, but he was an extremely productive player at Penn State. I think he had a ton of PBUs and picks. Like he was very, very productive with the ball on one of the best defenses in the country. But if a guy like him, if you run a 4.42, you probably go in the second round. But he runs a little slower. Again, I'm going this off just memory from whatever 6 months ago. You fall at the end of the third round. And now, Hufanga tears his ACL. He's got to play. It's the NFL, right? Starters go down all the time. And young players, rookie, second-year practice squad guys, are thrust into positions like that. Hey, John, should players wear more padding in today's game? I get that it might limit the speed players can generate, but with all the talk of keeping players safe, would it not be the obvious thing to do? Thanks. Have a great Thanksgiving. Also, favorite Thanksgiving side dish? I'm a pretty meat and potatoes guy when it comes to Thanksgiving. Just give me my stuffing, give me my turkey, give me a little cranberry, give me mashed potatoes, give me whatever greens you have, whether it's peas, whether it's green beans, and I'm good. And obviously the Hawaiian rolls. And then I'm king of open the freshly baked Hawaiian roll, put the turkey in the Hawaiian roll, put a little cranberry on top, dip that in the mashed potatoes. And then if you have peas, you could even then take the mashed potato part of the dip into the peas, take a bite. I don't think it gets any better. I'm always offended by people that don't like turkey. When I hear I'm not a big turkey guy, it's like, yeah, that pisses me off. Listen, love red meat as much as the next guy, but I love turkey. I love a fresh cooked turkey on Thanksgiving. I like it on Christmas, even though, my brother's more of a prime rib guy. I like prime rib too. But I always, I don't know. I'm a big white meat guy. I like turkey. I like chicken. I like it a lot, actually. It's easier on my stomach. Maybe that's part of it, right? I think red meat sometimes, I don't exactly have the Rock's metabolism here. So the white meats are easy on my insides than definitely feels like some of the red meat. And I'm not some health conscious freak, but I've just thought it was easy. Now there's that after feeling of the turkey, get a little sleepy. Have a cup of coffee, right? Have an espresso. But I'm a big turkey guy. What was your question? I forgot your question. I completely forgot your question. Now I made it disappear. Oh, should players wear more padding? Okay, I found it. Here's the thing. Like, let's take some knee injuries that we've seen from Jordan Travis this week, the Florida State quarterback, to earlier this year, Nick Chubb. Hell, even Hufanga tore his ACL. Like, what would padding do to any of this? I don't think it has. These guys, I don't think padding has any ability to neutralize and slow down any of these violent injuries. I really don't. Right? If you play high school football, they make you wear the hip pads, make you wear the thigh pads, and they make you wear the knee pads. If you watch a lot of NFL players, and probably college as well, you see a lot of guys with maybe on each side of their leg one piece of the foam padding. I just don't think it has much impact. I really don't. I don't know if it would change a lot. The violence in which someone is running at you head first, shoulder first. If I'm 204, if Fred Warner is running at you full speed, if Myles Garrett is running at you full speed, there's just nothing that is going to limit their power in the velocity of the impact. So I hear what you're saying. Like, in theory, it makes a lot of sense. Why don't you just put some more pads on? But it's not like a hockey goalie, right? You would want to wear more pads as a hockey goalie, one, to limit the airspace, and two, so you don't get injured, or even a catcher in baseball. I just think I don't think it would limit anything. It's hard to find a major injury in the NFL from contact and go, if he would have just had more leg pads, that wouldn't have happened. It's not like a seatbelt in the car or something, right? Met an evil version of you at the Blackjack Table Casino in Wisconsin on Saturday. Wonder what he was like. 2 questions. Why don't you gamble? I do, heavily. I've had to pick my spots as I've had a remodel that has cost me a lot of money. And I don't get all, I can't make $100 bet on the NFL. It does nothing to me. I don't care. I'm not acting like Jeff Bezos here. I'm just telling you, for me to place a bet now, it's hard for me to place non-golf. I could place $100 bet in golf 30-1, right? Or even 10-1 to win 1,000. I can't place a $200 NFL bet to win $200. It's a waste of my time, energy, and honestly money. Because if I lose it, it does nothing to me. I have to bet enough where I get juice. So to me to make a bet that's worth, it's going to start with 4 figures. Now, I'm not saying that's 10,000 or 9,000, but even if it's 1,000, 1,500, $2,000, you start betting 4 or 5 games, like all of a sudden you look up, you're at 20 grand. So I go one game at a time because of this remodel situation has been very expensive. But that's just being honest with you. But I can't afford to bet 25 grand on a game, but I have to bet enough to keep me going. Like a $100 bet on a football game. It's just, I've been gambling for too long. I mean, I was doing that in college when I didn't have any money. So I've been gambling so long that I have to gamble, and there's nothing like it, right? I could bet $5,000, let's say Thursday. Let's say I pick one of the games, Lions, Packers. If I bet $5,000 on that game and won, that high of winning it and watching that game would trump me making, from a podcast, 50 grand in a quarter or whatever. I mean, whatever, right? I don't get any juice from business money. And I've been doing this now in the trenches of non-W-2 life for close to a decade. At first, it is kind of invigorating, and obviously it never sucks getting bigger and bigger in terms of money, but it doesn't do anything for me. My juices are unfazed. Honestly, I swear, I'm not saying if someone handed me $50 million, I wouldn't get juiced up. But relative to what I've been used to generating now for a while, even when I increase it, it doesn't do much for me. But there's nothing like gambling. Nothing. There is no high like winning a bet. That, to me, to make the same amount of money that I win the bet to get the same feel, would probably have to 100x it. So, I mean, I don't know why you think I don't gamble. I fucking love to gamble. It's why I think so many people in the media are such fraudulent. Like, you couldn't get them to bet $50 on a game if you put a gun to their head. These people, that 99% of people in the media would never gamble. So when I see him promoting stuff, it's like, you are such frauds. You're just such a whore. Which, listen, I'm all for. It's part of business. But it's like, part of this is like acting like you're doing it when you're not doing it at all. And I've been gambling since I was 16, sneaking into Cache Creek. Do you feel Kevin O'Connell feels more free to call his offense with a mobile quarterback like Dobbs as opposed to Kirk Cousins? I think they were humming with Cousins. I mean, calling that offense against the 49ers when he went like 35 of 45, as the kids would say, he was in his bag. I just think it's different. And I think part of calling an offense with Dobbs is there were a couple plays on Sunday night and definitely the week before where he kind of freelances. That's the thing when you get a running quarterback. A lot of times when it results in a sweet play, the play caller had nothing to do with it. Stuff wasn't there and the dude just runs around. And sometimes when you run around, especially if you don't go past the line of scrimmage, you end up making an explosive play or throw a touchdown. Like, the play caller didn't have anything to do with that. It's just the player. I would say most things with Cousins, you get credit for, you're a partner with him. When you get a running quarterback, it's not a 50-50 partnership. It's definitely not. Because some of his greatest plays are just completely instinctive, making shit happen from scratch. Big fan of the show, been listening for a while. I'm a Packer fan and looking at their remaining schedule, they have 4 winnable games. If they do finish 8-9 and Love looks like a solid quarterback, do you see the Packers trading down in the draft and gaining more picks, trying to get in the top 8 and grabbing a quarterback? I told Coward this the other night. You got to be very careful when you have performances against the Chargers and Brandon Staley. That does not define your success, right? To me, there's a big week for him. Short week, divisional opponent, really good team. You don't have to win, but does he keep looking good? Does he keep, I mean, his numbers yesterday to the 2 young wide receivers and the 2 tight ends were awesome. It's like he's playing Brandon Staley. I don't think anyone knows what they're doing out there, right? In terms of like what Brandon's calling in the defense, I don't think anyone's on the same page. So I think there is a lot of interest as they play. I have to look at their schedule, but play the Lions this week. Have you played the Bears twice? See who they play. So you got the Lions Thursday. Then you play the Chiefs at Green Bay. Then you play the Giants at New York, which while they suck, that's a pretty interesting game. Then you play the Bucs at home. Like I watched the Bucs yesterday against the Niners. You know, they do have some good defensive players. Now, Devin White got hurt in the game, but Vita Vea is really good. They've drafted some young pass rushers the last couple of years. You know, some of their corners have just been there for a while. What's his name? The young safety from Minnesota. His dad played in the NFL forever. He's a good player. Panthers, they suck. Vikings. So it's like some of these games, Antoine Winfield Jr. I mean, does he have multiple double-digit touchdown games? Like back-to-back games where he throws 250 yards and a couple touchdowns? Maybe 3 touchdowns and a pick? Or does he have those games where he's struggling to be in like the low 100s and no touchdowns? So I think he still has a lot on the line. He definitely, listen, a game's a game. In yesterday's game, he was really good. But, you know, I've seen him early in the season. I'm like, I don't know. Now he's young. He hasn't played that much. I know he's technically an older player in the sense that he's been in the league a couple years, but he hasn't played. First year starting. So I would say these next, they got 6 more games. If 4 of them, he can throw 2+ touchdowns. So he can get to, let's just say, that would be let's say he gets to 11, 12 thrown touchdowns. I definitely think he could make a pretty good case to just run it back another year and draft other players. But that to me would definitely be on the line. It's weird. Like he can look really, really terrible. And it's part of football, right? Most guys, they can have really good games and look awful. Baker Mayfield had some good games and he can look terrible. One throw, it's like, God, he looks like a former number 1 pick. Another throw, you're like, that should have been a pick 6. That's most guys are not Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. So I guess part of it is getting used to. I think it's hard for Packer fans because you're used to Rodgers, which 96% of his games are going to be good. Even most games you're losing, he's good. Like Jordan Love's much more of a normal quarterback situation. We're like, is he good? Is he bad? Should we keep him? The good thing is, and this is where you guys get credit, no 5th-year option pickup, and you're not paying him any money. So see how it goes. Adios.